Welcome to the African Utility Week studio. I am Denise, the content manager for ngerati.com, and we're very privileged today to have Ayanda Nakedi. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And she is the Senior General Manager of the Renewables Business Unit for Eskom. It's quite a big job.
Yes, thank you, especially doing it within a coal utility.
Yep.
It comes with its own challenges.
I'm absolutely sure of that. Well, let's get started with the interview. Currently, what are the challenges that your department faces at the moment with regards to renewables developments?
In answering that question, I would prefer that we talk generally so that you can get the perspective of how the renewables deployment in this country is and what challenges they are facing. As you know, these renewable plants are far from the grid, and we naturally follow the sun, and we naturally follow where the wind is, which means the wind is in the Western Cape, along the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape. And when you're talking the sun, their highest solar radiations are in Uppington. But the grid is not necessarily strengthened in those areas.
Right.
So you have got areas that have got high resource availability, but not enough grid available. So there has to be investment into these areas to ensure that the power from these plants is evacuated. Also, the challenges that we have noticed is the current programs that are there have not benefited some local companies, and the DOE, the policymaker, is making inroads to ensure that the process is simplified, because it's quite costly at this point in time with the involvement of lawyers to ensure that there is involvement of all, and redefine the local content, because if you look in these plants, they are at the outskirts, where in areas that are poverty stricken,
yes.
And those communities needs to develop, and there needs to be benefits that goes to those communities. So we do have a policymaker now looking at redefining, and if these plants are built in these areas, what should that plant owner do to at least assist those communities in which they operate?
Okay, and I mean, with regards to the community development, I understand that, but what's happening with the transmission networks? It seems as if the bids are taking place with regards to renewable development, so those projects are being accepted, but they're, like you said, that infrastructure is not strengthened. There's no network.
Right. Yeah.
How are these two going to come together to enable a quicker enablement of renewable integration?
There is no alignment, you're right. Meaning the utility making investment properly in time for the plant owner to be able to connect the plant. But what is happening now, we have identified key strategic areas where we all know, with the wind atlas map that has been published, and knowing where the solar places are, so there's likely going to be grid strengthening in certain areas. Certain environmental approvals need to take place before even these rounds take place, so that the approvals, which are time consuming for anyone who wants to put in a transmission grid, are resolved long before these rounds take place.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a matter of chicken and the egg, isn't it?
It is a matter of a chicken and an egg. So there are strategic areas then that will be identified, so that the grid operator starts looking and getting approvals in place, and it is not done when the routes are completed.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's too late then. I mean, then otherwise some projects, I mean, some investors might possibly even lose interest. I mean, is that potentially what could happen? You know, investors think, well, this is taking too long.
In fact, it's not even lose interest. Their projects might not be bankable.
Yeah.
And the cost that they incur for development, even before they reach financial close, it's very costly.
That's a serious problem. So you don't want any delays whatsoever.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And you are going to be chairing a discussion tomorrow, and it's called Overcoming Grid Connectivity Challenges and the Strategies to Create Resilient Energy Networks. Could you give us an overview of what you will be discussing tomorrow?
It's what plans and how can we resolve this grid challenge.
Yeah.
But remember, it's in twofold, this whole thing.
Right.
There is a belief, there's a view that says we need to do network strengthening in order to evade power for these plants. And there's another view that says maybe we should be off-grid. Maybe we should look at off-grid. solutions, especially for the new plants, small plants, where we bring in solutions through distributed generation in order to delay the investment in the grid infrastructure. And there are two schools of thought. In some countries, you would require distributed generation. In some countries, you might require a mixture of both. Right. But that's what we'll be talking about tomorrow. And what should the grid operator do in order to minimize the impact and ensure that the penetration of the renewables is properly done into the system, given the fact that they cause some intermittency if there's high interpretation, given the German example that we have all seen. Or we move into distributed generation, or we bring these plants where demand is, like PV. PV, you can move it to where demand is. Gauteng, which is a congested area which has got a high demand, you can actually build a PV plant in Gauteng and connect to the grid in order to ease the constraint in that area, especially around Gauteng.
I mean, the smaller generation almost makes sense to me, you know, in the sense of industries, for instance, who need a reliable source of power constantly, and commercial areas, and the outlying rural areas who are desperate for reliable sources of power. The smaller generations, to me, almost makes more sense, you know, going off-grid. But what happens after that? I mean, if you've got all this off-grid power, will Eskom eventually link them up, or would that just almost be lost revenue for them, or how would that work in the end?
Look, off-generation has got revenue implications for the utility. It has got sustainability challenge for the utility, whether the utility will be sustainable in the future, because if you think about it, you lose those customers completely because they are off-grid. But there is a policy that is coming up from the regulator for small embedded generation. That's what we're talking about, because they are now prosumers. And they may want to sell some of that excess energy into the grid. And there is a public participation that took place on this matter. And Eskom then will have to buy this at a specific tariff. And that is all into the cards. And then resolve some technical requirements, because even if they are off-grid, and even if they are distributed generation, even if one point in time they might sell power into the grid, they will have to meet some industry technical specifications. So we are in the process of defining those technical specifications to ensure that this happens in a safe manner. And also we know where they are, so that we can better predict what's happening in terms of the system.
Well, that's quite exciting, in the sense that, I mean, Eskom is clearly struggling a bit for generation, for capacity, and there's not enough power. So with that excess power coming in, that might solve a multitude of problems in the end of the day. I mean, within 5 to 10 years, do you see it happening within that kind of period, or?
Look, for any challenge, it brings about some opportunities. And there are opportunities that are coming in. There are opportunities of storage that are coming in. There are batteries where you could electrify a house and also give them a battery, and they're completely off-grid. But if you look into utilities, it affects the business model of the utilities.
Yes, it would.
So I've got no doubt in my mind that the future generation mix will be dominated by renewables, and it will be heavily lenient towards renewables, especially the storage and the smart metering technology that is coming through, and that will be the future.
We were touching on, you know, obviously the intermittency of renewables is a huge problem worldwide, and the holy grail is the energy storage subject. We were discussing or touching on Tesla briefly. How excited is Eskom about this, you know?
No, maybe you must say how exciting is the renewables industry about it, because I think it's a good thing, because the prices now it has demonstrated that the prices will come down quickly. Imagine if you could have more Teslas. I mean, I've just read the other day that they've run out of order for the batteries that they have, and imagine if more companies can follow the model of Tesla, the price of batteries will go down.
And it will.
The utilities will lose their customers forever.
Well, this is what I wanted to discuss now. Surely, is this not a direct threat to Eskom's business model currently?
Look, it is a direct threat for all utilities,
yes,
because it challenges the central generation model, which is why you will see E.ON, a huge German utility, exiting and moving into renewables.
Yes.
That's why you will see Enel coming into this country. That's why you see these big utilities getting involved into renewables. And I think as Eskom, we have made that decision as well for survival, for sustainability of the company. Yeah. We can't not get involved in renewables because that's the way to go to ensure sustainability of the company.
Well, it's a good thing to hear that Eskom doesn't have blinkers on, because I think a few utilities overseas got caught quite badly, especially in Germany. So I suppose in a sense, with Africa maybe being a little bit behind as far as renewables development is concerned, you can almost learn from those utilities and see, learn from, take the blinkers off and see what's happening. And
no, we have removed, certainly in my unit, we have removed the blinkers.
Absolutely.
And we have tracked, we have seen what those other German utilities, I mean, even in America, if
yes,
you go to US, the same. The American utilities face the same challenge.
Yeah.
So Eskom is not in a different space. It will face the same challenge. Therefore, we have also made that decision. The future of Eskom has got to involve renewables going forward.
And I imagine for them, instead of looking at it as a threat to them, it's almost as an opportunity for new products and new services for Eskom. So
definitely,
that will be quite exciting to see what happens in the next couple of years. With regards to the conference, do you have a message that you'd like to share with other utilities?
Look, one of the things we discussed today, Africa is very open for business.
Yes.
We do have a lot of opportunities for these, in fact, untapped potential in this continent for wind and for solar, but we cannot do it alone.
No.
We cannot do it alone. We need other countries, we need funders, we need other utilities who have done it for sharing of knowledge, and I'm sure given the challenges that we face in the continent, but for some reason they provide opportunities. People still want to come to Africa even though we face the challenges, and that is something good for us, and therefore we must open doors and embrace all the other countries so that we can get out of these challenges.
Absolutely, and it's all about attracting investment at the end of the day, and
yes,
attracting interest from everywhere. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure you'll enjoy the rest of the presentation, the conference, and your presentation tomorrow. And thank you very much to our viewers for joining us as well. If you have a look on the Enjurati website, there will be other studio interviews. Please feel free to have a look at those. Thanks for joining us.